Welcome to Fable Sonder, where every story inspires and connects. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment to support us. Now let's dive into today's tale. Sit back and enjoy.
Fable Sonder, the stories of hidden life.
Mason Carter sat on a weathered bench in Asheville Park, the late spring sunshine bathing the area in golden light. Yet he barely noticed its warmth. The past 3 months in a VA hospital had left him with more than physical scars and a medical discharge. It had stolen his sense of purpose. As children laughed and chased each other across the playground, their joy was a stark contrast to the memories that haunted him. "At least the weather's nice," he muttered, taking a sip from his water bottle. The past few days had been a blur of mindless TV shows, a mix of soap operas, animal documentaries, and health programs. Anything but the news, which he couldn't stomach after what he had seen. His grandmother's empty house weighed on his thoughts. She had passed while he was away, severing his last connection to family without even giving him the chance to say goodbye. The inheritance she left ensured he wouldn't starve, but the silence in her house was suffocating. Running a hand through his shortly cropped hair, Mason murmured, "I can't just sit around forever." His military training had ingrained in him the need for purpose, a mission, but right now that sense of direction seemed as distant as his former ability to serve. A sudden commotion from the playground caught his attention. A group of kids was playing soccer, their energy infectious. For the first time in a while, Mason smiled, remembering simpler times when his biggest concern was making it home before dark. Just as he was about to cap his water bottle, a soccer ball flew out of nowhere, smacking his hand and spilling water across his jacket. A woman's panicked voice called out, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." Turning toward the voice, Mason found himself looking into a pair of deeply concerned brown eyes. The woman stood holding a small boy's hand, while another child shifted nervously behind her. "They're just being kids," Mason said, brushing off her apology with a smile. The little boy, Tyler, hesitantly introduced himself after Mason extended his hand. The woman, Haley, introduced herself and her other companion, Lucas, explaining they should head home. On impulse, Mason asked, "Mind if I walk with you?" These streets can be tricky with two active boys. Haley hesitated but eventually nodded. As they walked, she shared pieces of her life. Lucas was her nephew, and her sister, Sarah, was battling illness. Her voice tightened as she mentioned Sarah's husband, abandoning them after seeing the mounting medical bills. Something stirred in Mason, a sense of purpose he hadn't felt since before his discharge. A few days later, Mason found himself stepping into Frank Thompson's luxury car service. A military buddy had called in a favor, leading Mason to an interview he hadn't planned on pursuing. Frank, a veteran himself, welcomed him warmly, and Mason noticed the office walls adorned with military memorabilia. Frank mentioned wedding season was approaching and needed reliable weekend help. "Ever driven a limo before?" Frank asked. Mason, confident, replied, "No, but I've handled everything from Humvees to tanks." With a smile, Frank took a chance on him, assigning him his first wedding that Saturday. The first wedding went smoothly, just as Frank had promised. Mason found himself smiling as he watched the bride and groom beam with happiness. The work brought him into contact with joyful moments, and slowly Mason found a rhythm in the job. Weekend after weekend, he drove couples to traditional church weddings, mountain meadow ceremonies, and elegant events at the Biltmore estate. Challenges arose: bridezillas, drunk groomsmen, and family drama. But Mason's military training served him well. He remained calm under pressure, professional, and prepared for the unexpected. During these months, Mason often thought of Haley and the boys, wondering how they were doing. He even drove through their neighborhood occasionally, hoping for a glimpse of them. One Friday evening, Frank noticed Mason's distracted demeanor and commented, "Some love stories are just waiting for the right moment to start." Those words would soon prove prophetic. The next morning's job came with unusual instructions. The groom insisted on keeping the partition up the entire time. Mason's instincts flared as Frank cautioned him about the groom's odd behavior. When Mason arrived at the pickup location, his heart stopped. Haley, dressed in a simple white dress, stood with a heavy-set man gripping her elbow possessively. Behind her, Tyler and Lucas looked scared and confused. The man, Gregory, introduced himself with a forced smile, instructing Mason to keep the partition up. As the ride began, Mason noticed Haley's rigid posture and the boys' nervous glances. A piece of paper fluttered through a gap in the partition. Mason discreetly picked it up and unfolded it. Haley's note pleaded for help, revealing Gregory's plans to send the boys to foster care while fleeing the country with her. Mason's jaw clenched. His combat training kicked in. He had seen situations like this before, and he wasn't about to let it escalate. At the hotel, Gregory's friend attempted to lead the boys toward a car. Mason trailed behind, his instincts honed and his resolve firm. As the man roughly hurried Tyler and Lucas, Mason approached silently. With a swift chokehold, he rendered the man unconscious. The situation was far from over, but Mason had made his choice. This was a battle he couldn't walk away from. For the first time since his discharge, Mason felt like the man he used to be, a protector, a fighter, and someone with purpose. Mason whispered, keeping his voice calm and steady. The boys, Tyler and Lucas, nodded with wide eyes. "Your mom needs our help. Can you be brave for her?" he asked gently. Tyler's voice trembled as he asked, "Is Mom okay?" "That mean man said we have to go away forever," Lucas added, tears welling up. "He said my mom is going to die, and nobody wants us anymore." Mason's jaw tightened, but his voice remained firm. "Nobody's going anywhere they don't want to," he assured them. After securing Gregory's unconscious friend in his own car, using decorative wedding ribbons as makeshift restraints, an irony not lost on him, Mason ushered the boys into the limousine. His mind raced, piecing together contingency plans like a soldier in combat. Although the hotel's security cameras would have captured everything, he didn't care. Some situations demanded action, consequences be damned. After securing Gregory's unconscious friend in his own car, using decorative wedding ribbons as makeshift restraints, an irony not lost on him, Mason ushered the boys into the limousine. His mind raced, piecing together contingency plans like a soldier in combat. Although the hotel's security cameras would have captured everything, he didn't care. Some situations demanded action, consequences be damned. Climbing the stairs, Mason could hear raised voices echoing down the hallway. His pulse quickened, but his steps remained measured. The door to room 516 was slightly ajar, a stroke of luck born of Gregory's arrogance. Through the gap, Mason saw Haley pressed against the wall, Gregory looming over her, his voice thick with malice. "You're mine now," he sneered. "Your sister's treatment, the boy's future, it all depends on you being a good, obedient wife." The sight triggered something primal in Mason. Taking a deep breath, he burst through the door just as Gregory raised his hand to strike Haley. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. "Step away from her," Mason commanded, his voice carrying the authority of years on the battlefield. Gregory turned, his face contorted with rage. "Who the hell are you?" he spat, his meaty hand digging into Haley's arm. Three men in dark suits emerged from the adjoining room. Their professional movements and subtle hand signals revealed them as ex-military or law enforcement. Hired muscle, not amateurs. Mason kept his tone steady. "Your friend downstairs won't be joining us. The boys are safe." Gregory's face reddened with fury. "You have no right. She's my wife now. I own her. Do you know who I am?" Mason's eyes never wavered. "In this town, nobody owns anybody. Not here, not anywhere." One of the guards lunged at Mason, throwing a wild punch that Mason easily deflected. Combat training took over as Mason neutralized the men one by one, using their momentum against them. "You're ruining everything," Gregory screamed, backing toward the window. "Do you know how much I planned this? She was perfect, desperate, alone, willing to do anything." Mason scoffed. "Your grand plan was to abandon 2 kids to foster care and force a woman into marriage? Pathetic." Haley hesitated for a moment as Mason shouted, "Run!" Finally, she bolted out the door, her torn wedding dress billowing behind her like a flag of surrender. Gregory tried to chase after her, but Mason intercepted him, pinning him against the wall. "The police are probably already on their way," Mason said quietly, his voice deadly calm. "Enjoy explaining your trafficking scheme to them." Haley reached the limousine, where she embraced her boys tightly. Mason followed shortly, navigating the limo through Asheville's traffic while watching Gregory's men close in. A black SUV appeared in the mirror, followed by 2 more boxing them in. Mason barked instructions into his phone. "Frank, we've got trouble. Gregory's got heavy muscle on our tail." Frank's response was swift. "Get here fast. We'll be ready." With precision driving, Mason maneuvered the limo through narrow streets, narrowly avoiding capture. The garage door of Frank's workshop rose just in time, slamming shut behind them as Gregory's men arrived too late. Inside, Frank and a group of veterans stood ready. These weren't hired thugs. They were men of honor, prepared to protect the innocent. "Welcome to the sanctuary," Frank said, helping Haley and the boys out of the limo. "Nobody gets in here without my say-so." 1 year later, the garage was filled with the scent of mountain laurel. Frank adjusted his tie in the side mirror of the very same limousine. Beside him stood Sarah, her health fully restored thanks to the veterans who'd rallied to fund her treatment. Mason and Haley were about to marry in a simple, heartfelt ceremony. Tyler and Lucas, now vibrant and happy, played in the church garden. With precision driving, Mason maneuvered the limo through narrow streets, narrowly avoiding capture. The garage door of Frank's workshop rose just in time, slamming shut behind them as Gregory's men arrived too late. Inside, Frank and a group of veterans stood ready. These weren't hired thugs. They were men of honor, prepared to protect the innocent. "Welcome to the sanctuary," Frank said, helping Haley and the boys out of the limo. "Nobody gets in here without my say-so." 1 year later, the garage was filled with the scent of mountain laurel. Frank adjusted his tie in the side mirror of the very same limousine. Beside him stood Sarah, her health fully restored thanks to the veterans who'd rallied to fund her treatment. Mason and Haley were about to marry in a simple, heartfelt ceremony. Tyler and Lucas, now vibrant and happy, played in the church garden.